Hey, Jay Smith back here again. The question, the question that always comes up in a lot of our discussions is the person of God in Islam. In Christianity, Muslims believe that Allah is God, and I've always had to scratch my head and ask, is Allah God? And I've looked all through my Bible. I can't find Allah anywhere here. But basically, Allah means the God. It's a generic term, the God, in Arabic. It's a very recent term. I don't think we've found any documentation for the name the God earlier than about the 4th or 3rd or 4th century AD. So it's a very new term for God. It's generic, and that's understandable. But that's not the name we're looking for. I mean, see, in the Bible, in the Old Testament, it's very specific that there's one name that you need to find to delineate who the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is. In fact, Moses asked this question in Exodus. He says in Exodus 3, before he was going to go down to Egypt to save the Israelites there, and he says to God over and over again, he questions God, don't send me, don't send me. 5 times he questions God not to send him. And finally he says, what is the name that I can use so when I go down there, they'll be able to recognize me? What is that name? And verse 14, God said to Moses, I am who I am, Yahweh. That's the name we're looking for. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. Say to your Israelites, the Lord, the God of your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This is, according to verse 15, this is my name forever. The name by which I am to be remembered from generation to generation. You can't get more specific than that. That's the name that Moses needed to go down to Egypt with. That's the name that all the prophets used. You'll find it 6,823 times in the Old Testament. Anytime you see L-O-R-D in capital letters, that is Yahweh, or Jehovah, depending where you put the vowels. That's the name we're looking for. Now, there are 2 other names that were quite popular. Elohim, which was probably the second most popular name, which means the gods. It's probably the closest that we can get to Allah. It's only found 2,000 times, and it's not, anybody can be called the gods. It's a plural name, actually. And then there's also Adonai, which is a descriptive name for God, and it's only found 340 times. The name that is the most important, Yahweh, that's the name we're looking for. And we cannot find it in this book here. We cannot find it in the Quran. It doesn't exist. It is not on the lips of the prophet. It doesn't exist. You won't find it in the traditions. You won't find it in the hadith. You won't find it in the sirah. You won't find it in the tafsir, the commentaries. You won't find it in the tahqiq, the histories. You won't find that name in any of the traditions or in the Quran itself, which creates a problem. Because if this is the name that every prophet used, in fact, Jesus, this is the name that he appropriated for himself in John 8:58, when he said, before Abraham was, I am Yahweh. And that's the name that got the Jews so angry, because he was daring to use the personal name for God. I would imagine that any prophet would want to, if he was going to show his salt or be considered to be authoritative, would have to show that name. Moses needed to go down to Egypt. Why is it Muhammad didn't know it? And what does that say about his prophethood? If he did not know God's personal name, what kind of prophet is he? So that's the name we're looking for. Is Allah God? Absolutely not. If you believe that Allah, the God, represents Yahweh. Now, I know that the Arabic Bible uses the word Allah because that's the only name they had in Arabic. It's unfortunate that the translators use the word Allah. I think sooner or later we're going to have to change that, because that is not the God that I see here. That is not the God of the Bible. Now, you might want to get even more specific. Look carefully at these 2 gods, the God of the Quran and the God of the Bible, and you'll see one glaring difference between these two. Even if you don't want to talk about the name, just look at the characters. The first thing I talk to Muslims whenever they ask me is, this is the same God in both scriptures. I ask them one simple question. Does your God, the one you see here, Allah, does he come and enter time and space? Does he come to earth? Does he participate with his creation? If you can't answer me that question, then you cannot tell me that we have the same God. I don't care what you call him. Because the God of the Bible does enter time and space. He did so at the very beginning, right there in the Garden of Eden. It was he that was walking and talking in the cool of the day in Genesis 3, verse 8 and 9. That's the God I'm looking for. Somebody who comes down, limits himself, relates to me as a person, one-to-one. That's the God I see right through the Old Testament. That's the God I see in the person of Jesus Christ when he came 2,000 years ago. My God can enter time and space, and if your God cannot enter time and space, he's not the same God. If you want to call him Allah or any other name, be careful. That's not the name we find. We need to find Yahweh. And we need to find a God that enters and comes down to earth, a God who participates with us, a God who relates to us, a God where that relationship is something that is paramount. That's the kind of God I'm looking for. I can't find it here. I can find it all through this book. Come on home. and meet that God, the God that does love you, the God that does come down on your level, and the God that dies for you.